Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth.
I'm grateful to be American. And there's a number of reasons for that are recognizably significant. But there's one reason that might be a little bit unique to me. I'm grateful to be an American because in America, our food is a cheeseburger. In other countries, it's a falafel sandwich, or a taco, or some other thing. But here, it's a cheeseburger, and I love a cheeseburger. Which is why, even though it may not be the most spiritual thing in the world, I decided to devote this segment to the top 5 cheeseburgers you can get at a fast food restaurant. Now, as I said, not terribly spiritual, but if you live a steady diet of these, you may end up finding yourself with your spirit and your body separated. So please don't hear this as health advice. Also, some ground rules for my list. One, I'm not going to list anything I've never had, and there's going to be some perennial favorites or others out there that I just haven't had the opportunity to experience just yet. I would like to one day, but I haven't yet. Secondly, when I say fast food, I don't necessarily mean only a place where you order from the counter, but I am excluding, a Wagyu Angus steak with gold flakes on it that you get at some high-class place in New York or something like that. These are regular hamburgers. Secondly, as I make this list, I'm willing, and oftentimes I'm not willing to do this, but I'm willing to acknowledge that people have different opinions and there probably is no right answer. But I'm giving you my top 5. Third, I'm going to try to give you this list separate from what else is on the menu. Now, the truth is, it's sometimes hard to make that distinction. Because you're having a meal and you're enjoying the meal together, and so I get that, and I know when I sit down and have a burger at say Steak and Shake, that steak experience, that shake experience is part of the experience, and in like manner, fries are pretty doggone important to me. But I'm going to try as best as I'm able to kind of filter that out of the equation. So without further ado, here are my top 5 burgers. And this is not top 5 restaurants. These are specific burgers. Are you ready? Oh, I forgot one other rule. Have I mentioned before that I'm Scottish? I tend to be cheap. And that may mean that there are things on some of the menus of these places that I haven't tried. I don't get a Whopper when I go to Burger King. It might be particularly good. I don't know. That's not what I get. I get whatever's in the value menu. I don't get the Baconator at Wendy's. I order from the value menu. I tend to do that, and that's going to show up on this list, especially here at number 5. Wendy's Junior Bacon Cheeseburger. I've probably eaten more of these than any other burgers. Probably. Because there was a time when this was not only the most delicious burger I was aware of, but it was also the cheapest. You got, back in the day, like when I was in seminary, I used to drive by a Wendy's, I would leave work, and drive to class for the evening, and I would swing by the Wendy's on the way, and I would get 2 junior bacon cheeseburgers, a biggie fries, and a glass of water, all for $2.97. All 3 things, both burgers and the fries, were 99 cents. It's not the case anymore. And the burger was, bigger than your standard McDonald's burger. Plus, it had bacon. So this was just a great deal. And it tastes great. That's number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list is the Dairy Queen bacon double cheeseburger. Bacon's going to appear here a time or two. Dairy Queen's bacon double cheeseburger is just delicious. 2 things I love about it. 1, the meat tastes like meat, and 2, you can taste the mustard. I love mustard, and I love that burger. Of course, they have good fries, and of course, they have wonderful ice cream treats. So that's number 4, the Dairy Queen double bacon cheeseburger. Number 3 on my list is a tie, because the burgers are very similar, and they're both from a sit-down restaurant. Red Robin and Steak and Shake both offer a burger that comes on a bun with a burger, with cheese, with bacon, and with a fried egg. Oh, mercy, do I like that. In fact, I made that at home last night for myself. I love that. It's called the Royal Red Robin at Red Robin. I don't remember what it's called. It's Steak and Shake. They're both, again, exceedingly similar and both just absolutely delicious. So that's number 3. Number 2, I'm also going to have a tie. I hope you don't mind. It's hard not to. It's BurgerFi and Five Guys. Now, I like it that these folks, both of these restaurants, are trying to carve out another niche in the burger world. These are more high-end than McDonald's or Burger King, but still counter service and still unsophisticated. But boy, howdy, are they good. BurgerFi and Five Guys. And when I go to both of those places, I get mushrooms and jalapenos on the burger. And of course, they have great fries. So before we get to number 1, I want to mention some of the also-rans and some of the ones that maybe, again, I've never had that might be good. I've never had Shake Shack. I've never had a Smash Burger. I've never had a Whataburger. Well, I used to see Whataburgers all the time when I was in high school. I went to high school in Wichita, Kansas, traveled through Oklahoma and Texas quite regularly for sporting events. And I'd see these Whataburgers, but never went into one, and now I never see them and never got a chance to try one. But I'd like to one day. I've never even seen, I think, a Shake Shack or a Smash Brothers, but I hear good things about them. One that is on lists often that is not on my list, I'm sorry to say, is In-N-Out. Not a fan. Not a fan at all. I don't mind. I'll go there to placate other people who want to go there. Their fries are horrendous. They taste like cardboard. And the burgers are just ordinary. They're not bad. They're just ordinary. Nothing to write home about. Another one I do like that didn't make the list is the Fuddruckers burger. And again, same reason as Dairy Queen. The meat tastes like meat. So who came out on top? This is a burger I've only had a couple times in my life. This chain is so small and has contracted over the times, but it's called Backyard Burger. And their simple Swiss and mushroom burger is number 1 on my list. So there you have it, the top 5 hamburgers at fast food joints here in these United States. Let me know what you think. Go ahead and make your case for In-N-Out burgers. I've heard it. I can handle it. Change my mind.
My father used to say to me, if you have a cannon, fire it. What he meant by that is that when you've got something useful, you're in the context of a battle, You've got a powerful and potent weapon, then of course, put it to work. Don't be afraid. Don't hold it off in reserve. Well, as the Jesus Changes Everything podcast has grown and matured, one of the things that we have noticed is that every time Lisa's on, we do so much better. We have so many more downloads, which doesn't surprise me at all. There's a reason I married this woman. There's lots of them, actually, but one of them is that Lisa is a woman chock full of biblical wisdom. She has the character to be open and to be honest and to look to God's word for wisdom and guidance and direction. That's why I have her with me in the Life in the Blender segments that we do. It's why I invite her to do segments with me on curating your movie library. But it's also why, about once a week or so, I ask her to come on and do a segment all on her own. A segment we call The Purpose-Driven Wife. Lisa has a blog by that same name that she writes for from time to time, a Facebook page. I'd invite you to check it out. But now she also has a segment every now and again on Jesus Changes Everything. And you're about to enjoy one.
Childlike faith. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Jesus changes everything. When I came to Christ, I was a 7-year-old child. I learned what sin was and that I was a sinner. I understood that my sin separated me from God. I was led through the sinner's prayer, confessed my sin, and received Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior right there in that moment. I had the faith of a child. I believed the Bible. I had an insatiable appetite and growing hunger for God. I began having dreams and knew God was revealing himself to me through them. I would often go to the woods, following the trail to the river, where I would walk along stony banks and sit on boulders and just sing to God. I sang songs I knew and songs I made up that were flowing out of my heart. I longed to bask in his nearness. I remember vividly looking towards the heaven, sunbeams bursting through the clouds, and feeling God's presence surround me. Heaven meeting earth. God dwelling with man. This was my special place. The flowing water reflecting the sun's rays like a sea of sparkling diamonds dancing. I went regularly to meet with God and worshipped him in his creation as the trees of fields clapped their hands. All creation sang its chorus to the glory of God through the sights and sounds of nature. In that sanctuary, I could join all creation to sing his praise. Church, on the other hand, was my training ground to learn his word and serve the body, even as a child. Few things kept me away. I attended 3 days a week, participated in Bible quizzing, choir, musicals where I often sang solos, toured with our church youth choir, attended summer church camp. Every event, I was there. Every Saturday for years, my junior church pastor took me to call on children and invite them to church. Several missionaries came to my home, where my mother would provide a picnic lunch, and they would pour wisdom and hope into my life. I read my Bible faithfully and was daily being transformed by the Holy Spirit. Simple, childlike faith. I, by his grace, came believing he was who he said he was. In adulthood, I continued to learn to tune out competing voices. It's true, I grew up in years, but my heart still longs to be that child free of the world's clutter, running to the rock where I am free to bask in his presence, singing songs of praise and spiritual songs of the heart, running with anticipation as I follow the trail to get to the river of life-giving water. He is there. He is here. And he has carried me every step of the way. He placed me where he chose. 44 earth years have passed since my first encounter with him. Yet he knew me before one of my days were written in his book. That's intimacy. Like the lesson from the Polar Express, adulting can be deafening to our ability to believe. We can lose the sense of oneness, closeness, and allow life to drive us away from the truth of his realness. Don't walk through life, deaf, and mute to his call. Don't grow up. Mature, yes, but cultivate childlike faith. Incline your heart, tune your ear, and listen for his beckoning call. Refuse to allow the cavalcades to prevent you from true intimacy with God.
I've mentioned more than once that I tend to be a collector. When I find a musician I like, I tend to purchase lots of their music. When I find an actor I like, I tend to flock to that actor's movies. And when I find a writer I like, I tend to read a lot of that writer. And one of the first writers that I sort of gobbled up was Pat Conroy. I was introduced to the work of Pat Conroy at the movies. The first Pat Conroy story that I consumed was The Lords of Discipline, which was just a very powerful movie starring David Keith. And a year or two after the movie came out, I got stars in my eyes after a recruiting visit from the Air Force that I would like to fly fighter jets and enter into the military. And my father thought that was a wonderful idea and wanted to put me in contact with his favorite general that he knew. But he also said, I think it'd be really helpful for you to read this novel. So I read The Lords of Discipline, which is the account based principally on the author's life, his experience at the Citadel, a military college in Charleston, South Carolina. And the horrors and the hardships of the plebe system and how he made it through and the relationships that were strengthened in the midst of it and the drama and the betrayal related to racial issues at that time. And it was just a wonderful book, a strange combination of sort of intense drama, very masculine, but there was also something very lyrical and melodic about the writing style. Well, when I read that, I had to get some more. I read The Great Santini, which is also made into a movie with Robert Duvall. I read The Water is Wide, which was made into a movie with Angelina Jolie, John Voight, called Conrack. And by that time, I was pretty much caught up. I had not read Conroy's first novel. I should mention that The Water is Wide is not written as a novel. All the other novels are pretty thinly veiled, but I read The Water is Wide, and it is a nonfiction account of Pat Conroy's year as a teacher on an island off the coast of South Carolina. So I got caught up, and when new books came out, I read them. That's just what I did. Didn't matter what it was, I read it. The most recent one I read was a nonfiction account called The Death of Santini, much more open account from Conroy about his relationship with his father, the Robert Duvall character in the movie. I mention all this because I had just finished reading another nonfiction book, this one taking us back again to the Citadel, this one called My Losing Season. My Losing Season. Leave it to Pat Conroy to write a book about a year in his career as a college basketball player when things went poorly. And sure enough, they do in the story. We read the background, the backdrop of Pat's adopting of and love of the game of basketball, his playing with his father, which is a part of a critical scene in The Great Santini. And honestly, a lot of the pleasure in reading the book is suddenly peeking behind the curtain, although the curtain was so thin and gauzy. But to see the connection between, now I'm writing nonfiction and this is what I'm telling you, and how that shaped the fiction that you've already read. It's almost like I don't know, one of those children's books that are flip books, not the ones that pop up, but there's like little windows and you open and you can see inside. And this is like seeing inside. This is the raw material from which these stories came. And in addition to that, you have the added benefit, again, of Conroy's style. Now, one of the things that I teach young writing students, and we've covered this a while ago when we were doing our series on writing well, is to avoid what we call, "Look, Ma, I can write." These are flourishes in our writing that actually end up distracting your reader, that make him forget the story he's engaged in or the argument he's engaged in and start thinking about you, the writer, which is not what you want when you're trying to get someone into a story or persuade someone of a point of view. Well, another rule for good writing is that good writers know when to break the rules. And there are so many times when you run across a sentence from Pat Conroy that you can't help but imagine him at work writing that sentence and smiling. You know he liked it. You know that he knew this was a turn of a phrase. So, My Losing Season. If you have read Conroy and enjoyed him and haven't read this one, I'd encourage you to go and get it. I got mine, by the way, at Goodwill for $1. Secondly, if you haven't read any Pat Conroy, I would encourage you to do so. I would probably encourage you to start with The Great Santini. And if you're not a book reader, check out The Great Santini. I think it's available streaming somewhere. I think that, in fact, that we covered it. The Water's Wide, maybe a little bit harder to find, as might be The Lords of Discipline. Don't start with The Prince of Tides or Beach Music. That's much later stuff. So, My Losing Season. And as always, let us know if you've read it. If you're going to read it, let us know what you think. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.